And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 87. 87, Connor. Yeah, there's no 87 ever.
There's no.
In the
It's
Bruins
a deadline
history.
episode.
The deadline episode. That's what it is. 87. The number of the trade deadline is 87. I call 1-800-87, I guess. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Connor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Getting right down to the trade deadline. We were only a few days away. Now it's heating up. I said on Bruins Beat, it wasn't heating up. And at the time, it wasn't. But now it's starting to really kick into gear with everything coming out. Elliot Friedman has 32 Thoughts Wednesday night, and it was just full of trade rumors and lots of different stuff with the Bruins. But we will start with Wednesday night's game, which was on TNT. And the Bruins lost to the Wild 3-2. The big story, though, Patrice Bergeron out before the game kind of came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I was not expecting that. There's a little bit of, warning signs in your head where Jack Studnicka gets called up. You're like, all right, what? Is there a trade going on? Which, if he's a center, I don't know what exactly that is. But, he's got an arm injury that I think they said it came up in practice. It wasn't like the head laceration or anything that he had against Pittsburgh, but sitting him out for a couple of games just to, prevent risk of infection, which smart move. You do not want to lose Bergeron for an extended stretch of time. So
crazy that you wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah, especially as we'll talk about, I'm sure in a little bit, one center is now off the market. So you don't have a lot of reinforcements outside of the organization to help you out right now. But definitely a big, setback for the Bruins in terms of, this is a stretch here where Minnesota's not playing well. Winnipeg's not playing well. Montreal is actually playing well under St. Louis, but it's still a bad team. Where you're able to, hopefully move up in the standings a little bit here. I think the Bruins now are, I think it's like 1-4-1 without Bergeron in the lineup, which
not good.
A little bit of a red flag. So,
yeah.
All then considered, they still kept it pretty close in that game against Minnesota. Kind of more or less ran out of gas there in that third, which second leg of a back-to-back, it happens. But definitely a small step back, at least for right now, in terms of kind of getting some traction and hopefully overtaking at least Toronto in the standings over the next week or so.
I mean, the Bruins Wild rivalry is heating up. You remember the game here in January?
Yeah.
It was nuts. And then same thing on Wednesday night. It was just like first 5 minutes, just hit after hit. Poor Connor Clifton was getting it's like a bug up against a glass, just getting like smushed. McAvoy was hitting everything that moved out there.
Who's a good player is Marcus Foligno. That dude just throws his weight around. That's a good playoff guy that's a good guy you need for the playoffs.
He is built like just like a stovepipe. I mean, the way that he can just like effortlessly drop you without like making it look like he's trying to drop you. Like with Clifton, it wasn't like he went out of his way. He just kind of like stood in Clifton's way and like his biceps and just Clifton hit the deck. But not a lot of stock to put in this loss. Again, as you said, second night of a back-to-back, heavy Wild team, a very good Wild team, by the way, as Spoke Z has been telling us for years now.
Yes.
Finally, it's coming to fruition. This team is pretty damn good. One thing I did like, though, aside from McAvoy getting burnt on the Kaprizov breakaway goal, McAvoy was everywhere on Wednesday night.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you look at him and you look at what is going to be required from guys when you get to the playoffs and where every game's pretty much a bar fight. You need a guy like McAvoy that kind of pulls you into the fight. And pretty much like, it's not like it's a new development with McAvoy. How many times have we seen him kind of be that guy that answers the call and steps in with a big hit? I mean, we saw it up in the bubble when he dropped Jordan Staal in that game, and that was a momentum changer. So he's definitely a guy I think you don't have to be concerned about in that regard. You've got guys like him, Marchand, even though he's not the biggest guy, right? He's the guy that will, go for that big hit or something that changes the momentum. So now I think it's more about seeing how some of these other guys gel and respond during these games, whether this isn't a game where I think you leave and you're like, the Bruins just need to bulk up completely. They need to get Middleton. They need to get like Delorier out of Anaheim.
They should have got Sherrod.
Yeah. Thank Christ. Even though, holy crap, if Sherrod's going for a first, a fourth, and a pretty solid prospect, yikes. But I think, you look at that game. It's not one where it's like, they need to completely beef up, but you still would like to, even if it's a guy like Middleton for a depth piece or something, you want to have at least one more guy that gets geared up to get through that fight. And, whether it's even guys on the roster, I mean, I think after the game, Bruce Cassidy said he was impressed with Charlie Coyle and his play. That he's not the most physical guy, but he was fighting in the corners. He was throwing his weight around. I think he had felt like 4 or 5 reverse hits in that game too. So he was playing physical and playing to kind of his strengths with his frame that he's got there. So it's encouraging to see McAvoy lead the way, but hopefully you see more guys get into that fight. And it's not to say that a guy like Rizik's all of a sudden going to be like trucking guys, right? But if you have more guys kind of pulling on that rope and playing kind of that playoff style game, it'll be encouraging when the games actually start to matter in a couple of months.
And I think that's why they got guys like Nick Foligno to hopefully kind of infuse that with the line. It just feels like that's not really clicking with him yet.
Yeah.
You also have Anton Bleed. You have guys like that, Curtis Lazar, who can kind of provide that spark that you're kind of looking for. Because the Wild, again, that's a team. If the goaltending holds up with that team, which is a big question mark, but if it does,
yeah,
that's a team I could see going deep in the playoffs. The way they're built, the way they play.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, that's one where just has it's the same with Nashville, which again still doesn't make any sense why they were trying to compete with getting Ekholm, and who knows what they do with Forsberg. But that's a team where you just look at the way they play, they grind it out. And I think they're far and away tops in the NHL and fighting majors. Not to say that they're going to just fight everyone in the playoffs, but that's a team that could wear you down over a 7-game series. Those are teams that have the right formula of, Nashville. Yeah, they'll grind you down, but they also have got Forsberg and these other guys that can bury you in the offensive zone as well. So
Yossi.
Those are the teams. Yeah, exactly. Yossi. Those are the teams that have the formula that, again, they may not be the favorites, but they win a round or two, wouldn't exactly be much of a surprise, right?
Speaking of former Predators, how terrific was it Wednesday night when the poor kid at the Kraken game has the sign up that says it's my birthday, I want a Calle Yarncroc stick, and Calle Yarncroc was
picked the wrong time, pal. Yeah, no, don't bring any sign around the trade deadline. I mean, the fact that Giordano is being held out of games now in Seattle as asset management. And he had a full ceremony on the ice too anyway. It'd be funny if he just got traded immediately afterwards. It was a wrestling reveal. He just rips off whatever team he's going to, just
the Flames.
Yeah, the Flames. Yeah, that'd be great.
Or he or he uncovers they give guys portraits usually when they do. Instead it's the team he's going to and what the return is for the trade.
It's always the most ridiculous gifts too. So it's we've given you a bottle of wine from our owner's vineyard, which isn't really much of a gift, but here you go. It's they have that. They have a silver stick. Then it's just a plane ticket to Calgary, economy class.
Yes,
that's
economy.
You're going.
You're sitting between two people on a regular flight. Well, wasn't it? They gave Chara a blank airline tickets to anywhere in the world, and that was right before COVID hit. So I don't
I don't think he's cashed it in.
Use those tickets yet.
Maybe he'll do one of those what is it, Virgin Galactic flights where it's you pay if it's a blank check. I mean, I think you're only in space for. I don't think you're even space. You're up in the upper atmosphere for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was BS. That wasn't even space.
Yeah, you kind of just float for a minute and then you're done. That's cool. I can go to the Yankee Cannonball in Canobie Lake Park and do that. And I'm gonna pay $40,000.
Exactly. Or the ride where you sit and it just goes up and down
exactly.
Quick.
Or the Turkish twist at Canopy Lake Park. Shout out Canopy Lake Park. Yeah, I don't need to take out a loan to go on a spaceship. I got Turkish twist.
I'll go do.
I remember the box there, Evan.
The big ride at Canobie Lake Park when I was growing up was Untamed. It was maybe 15 seconds, but it was a big drop, and there was always an hour line for that for that ride. It was way too much. Canobie Lake Park, that was a great time, a great field trip.
It still is a great time. What are you talking? It's still a great time. We're gonna do a live pod for the free agency at Canobie Lake Park.
Canobie Lake Park,
right outside the Boston Tea Party, the water splashing in the background.
Yes, that ride was. I always felt it was gonna come apart. It was wooden, and I haven't been there in so long. Maybe we'll do a live show on a roller coaster.
I was there when I was little, and in my youth, I had to wear glasses, and of course, I had these huge Harry Potter big circular lenses. And I was waiting at the very bottom of it where the water would splash. And granted, I was 5 or 6, and it was a wave. It was a wall of water hit me, and I flew backwards, and my glasses were completely shattered. They got on my face, and they were just broken. So that's my favorite memory. Canobie Lake Park.
We need video of that. That's funny.
That's got to be it's the Zapruder film. That's from way back in the day. That's in black and white film.
Someone filming from the bushes. It's so funny.
Yes.
To me. It's so funny because growing up, you'd go on those rides where you would get soaked and you didn't care. Like, it was so fun, and you walk around. Now, I think if I was on a ride like that and got soaked, I would be pissed off like the rest of the day.
And then it's like 11:45 a.m. You got another 8 hours to go there. Your flip-flops are like squeaking as you walk in. Yeah, no.
It's gross. Sticking to everything,
no.
Awful. But Canobie's a good time. I don't know how we got on this Canobie Lake Park.
People are so mad. They thought like we're gonna drop like trade news, and we're like 7 minutes into this. But anyways,
it is
little levity's important around this time of year, Evan.
Games are starting now for March Madness.
Yes, I'm definitely not watching it in like the corner of my room as Providence is playing. Well, they're up against the Jackrabbits, so alas.
Well, it's funny because I am going to be inundated. I start work today or Thursday at 5 p.m. I'm going to be inundated with games until about 2 a.m. So I'm going to watch all my games then. I'm going to save my eyeballs and my attention for then. And I don't want to see how bad my bracket's doing, like already starting. I always do a few brackets. Mine's not looking
too good already. So alas.
Crazy. I don't know. The odds of perfect bracket are like crazy. You could live through like 30 lifetimes and never do it. Anyways, what is worse than a bad bracket is Tomas Hertl re-signing in San Jose, which we thought might happen, but then I was like, no, like there's no way he actually does, right? Like they want to get assets, maybe do a quick rebuild. Like he would get you a fair amount. Nope, 8 years, $8 million per, right down right before the deadline. And that is bad news for the Bruins. Now I know some people were saying like, oh, it's good he didn't go to an Atlantic Division rival. That is true. It is good he didn't go to the Panthers or one of those teams, but it would have been nice to have Tomas Hertl on this team.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway from it is that I think throughout this deadline, even before the market started heating up, we've talked about, I think, what the Bruins' long-term strategy here is. And of course, it's you want to improve this current roster and maximize this team's potential and what could be the last kick at the can for Bergeron and a few of these other guys. That's obvious. But I think you look at whether it's their strategy of getting guys with term or it's, younger guys that you can add to this core for like the foreseeable future. Like they want to contend this year, but also have a framework in place for the coming years. So that's why we've talked about a guy like Hertl, who again, you'd have to re-sign, but if Hertl's your 2C next year and when Bergeron retires the next year or two, he's your 1C, you're all set. Like you're not, you still need to continue to improve this roster, but you've got a pretty good, way to bridge that gap between this Bergeron era and then whatever the next era is, right? The McAvoy Pastrnak era. Now you're kind of stuck in a spot where, again, it's not like the Bruins, all of their deadline hopes fell on Tomas Hertl. They can reverse course and look at the wing or on defense, which
feels like Claude Giroux is probably gone.
Yeah, if like Claude Giroux is probably the best possible other option there if you want to look at strength
down
the middle.
What I was saying was it feels like he's not going to Boston.
Yeah, I think it's Florida. Yeah. So even though I think they have to do but even if it's not Florida, like I know they have to do a little bit more cap maneuvering, then he's going to go to like Colorado. Like it's going to be, if he's moving and leaving Philly where he's so connected, I don't think it's going to be for a team in that like, A tier. It's like the S tier. It's going to be like one of like those two giants. And also like twist my arm if I have to go down to Palm Beach or Sunrise, Florida for a few months to try to win a cup. Like it's not the worst thing in the world. But for the Bruins, it's unfortunate just because it made so much sense is why I think it's such a kind of tough pill to swallow and why it kind of pours water on the fact that the Bruins had this, I think, long-term strategy of, we can contend this year, maybe next year Bergeron's back, but if we're smart with our, identifying our trade targets, we can fill in these kind of key cogs in the roster by, acquiring a guy like Hertl, a top six center in his prime that would fit in great here. Alas, that's not the case. So now it's you have to, switch gears with this current deadline, which at least there's more options out there. It's not like that, he was the only guy that, if they don't get Hertl, there's nothing else they can do. Of course, there's other stuff they can do. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, but in terms of the long-term goal, right? Like it's going to be an issue for however long it takes until they legit, find a person that to fill in that spot. Because if there's one thing that's going to undo this team and you look at the framework of them with, let's say they get like a Hampus Lindholm or a Garland or something like that. You add them to this core in the next coming years with McAvoy and Pastrnak and Hall and, Marchand still, in his prime, like Swayman as well. It's a good roster. But if there's going to be an Achilles heel, it's going to be you have nothing down the middle. If Bergeron retires next year and you have no one there, you're in trouble. So that's why I think the Hurdle news is so discouraging. And again, it literally, I don't get why San Jose is doing it. This is the problem with some of these GMs where you're sticking with guys when the writing's on the wall, they need to rebuild.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I also think, again, you look at, like, I just wrote this down. If you're core, I'm going to twist the knife a little bit more with Hurdle leaving, or Hurdle not going anywhere. Hurdle, Pastrnak, Hall, Marchand, McAvoy, Swayman. Not a bad core. You have a number one center. You got 3 top 6 wings, a number one defenseman, and a number one goalie. That's pretty good. But I think it comes down to with a guy, again, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. It's funny. This whole era in Bruins history began with bringing in a number one center and Mark Savard. Like, that's how this all started. Now, obviously, I think it's safe to say they still would have won the cup if Savard was healthy. Like, I think that's pretty, obviously probably would have. But that got the whole ball rolling. So again, it's okay to go out with a guy like Hurdle, who makes all the sense in the world, who checks all the boxes. It's okay to go out and get a guy like that and give him all that money. I think some people were saying, oh, they can only develop, their future number one centers. Well, they didn't. So you have to go out and do these things. It's the same with a guy like JT Miller, who also feels like he might be about to re-sign. So these teams are just, at least with Vancouver, it's more of a roster. Like, at least with Vancouver, I guess it's a little bit better up there. San Jose is a young rebuilding team. They have no goalie. Like, I don't understand it at all.
You look at that contract, which I think hurdles $8.1 million per year. So they've got 6 contracts now. They're going to cost legit, like, I think it's $49.9 million against the cap.
Oh, good.
And 4 of them are guys who are 37 in Burns.
And one of them looks just like you.
I know. 34 in Vlasic, aka Conor Ryan. Couture, who's 32, which still a good player, but he's not a guy you're necessarily building around. And Carlson, who's kind of rebounded this year, but still injuries, and he's not the same player, and he's making $11.5 million a year for the foreseeable future. Like, I don't know. Oh. I understand, I saw pushback by people saying, like, Hurdle's a fan favorite and they want to keep people in the seats. Well, like, sure, but they're also, you got $50 million of your cap spent on guys, of which 4 of them are pretty much sunk costs at this point. I don't get it, Evan. Like, again, I don't get it.
I don't get it at all. But the question now becomes, the Bruins cannot dwell on this forever. They have to move on. How do they pivot? And it feels like the way they pivot is they might get a top 6 winger, but it also feels like they're pivoting towards defense. At least that's kind of what Elliot Friedman alluded to on Wednesday night.
Yeah, no, I think Friedman said in his 32 thoughts that the Bruins are very cognizant of the fact that, depth on defense is what kind of hurt them in that Islanders series. So, if you're pivoting towards that, you at least have many options. I mean, obviously Chychrun is the top one, which I think I've been very, I don't know what the right word is. I haven't bought into the Chychrun hype in terms of just how viable the Bruins are as potential buyers in that situation, just because I still don't think you have the assets to acquire him, not without it being something where it's one where, like, if they got Chychrun, it would be a tweet from, like, Freeman being like, Chychrun to BOS. And people like, yes. And then, like, 5 minutes later, be like, yeah, like 2 firsts, Lori Lysell. And it'd be like,
no.
Like, I just think that, again, Arizona's not in a position that they need to move him. They've got other teams that can outbid the Bruins probably. And unless you want to pony up and completely deplete your farm system for one player, I just don't know if the Bruins are going to do that. Again, maybe it's Lindholm, who right now, I think it was Frank Saravelli just tweeted that Ducks not really hopeful about Lindholm long-term in terms of signing a contract, which is good news for the Bruins or anyone else. However, he also said that the Ducks would be asking for a first, an A+ prospect, and someone else for a rental. So, and again, it seems like Lindholm's a guy who wants to go to market. Like, I think he wants like an 8-year deal. So that would take him to his age 36 season.
Oh, good.
So
Goody.
Risk there. I mean, that's another one you have to be careful for. Again, fits the profile, even though his numbers have dipped a little bit. He very well could rebound if you put him with McAvoy or even Kahlo. Like, he spent a lot of this year with Jamie Drysdale, I think, who's a really young player for the Ducks. So maybe a more stable spot gets his numbers kind of back up to where they need to be. But there's at least other options out there, though, if they go for defense. Again, it could be just even a depth piece like a Jacob Middleton or Calvin DeHaan or Justin Braun, any of these guys, they all would help in that regard. Like, as much as I think a top 4D makes a lot of sense, and if you're able to acquire a Chychrun at the right value, which is going to cost a lot, but I think we've both fallen into agreement that if it's a first, Lori, another prospect, and something else like a second or a third, I think you do that. Like you give up one if it's Lori, yeah, and it's a legit 23-year-old top 4D under that contract, you do it. But if it's multiple guys, yeah, it's one. You're swapping.
Yeah, that's exactly. You're swapping current for future. Like that's kind of where you're at, and the Coyotes are more at. They need guys for the future. I also think it's very interesting that it feels as though with a guy like with Tomas Hertl, or excuse me, with the Ducks, it would have taken. It feels like it's going to take a lot, but the market could bring it down, right? They could get closer and bring the price down a bit. But again, like the Ducks, it feels like out of all the obvious guys that the Bruins could go for, it feels like the Ducks are the like Raquel, Lindholm, Manson's obviously gone, but those two feel like the obvious picks. But again, the Bruins don't do the obvious trades a lot of the times. Like Taylor Hall was kind of a one-off in that sense last year, where he just was like, I want to go to Boston. Like that's really it. Like when Buccigross tweeted just a picture of Boston last year, and everybody was like, what could it mean? What could it mean?
So he's listening to Augustana.
Yeah, that must be it. But it feels like the Ducks could provide that option. But again, I have not seen that tweet, but first round pick, which I'm okay with parting with. I'm okay with parting with the first, but then to also give up an A+ prospect for Hampus Lindholm, who again, as you said, shaky, could be on the decline, and signing a guy through when he's 36. Oh, doesn't it make your skin crawl?
And again, even if it's a thing where you acquire him and you sign him to, I don't know, 7-7, which I think would still scare a lot of Bruins, like a 7-year contract. Let's say you trade him and he agrees to that as part of the, as part of the deal. Even then, I don't want to give up like a first in Lori or Lysell for that, because he's not as much of a surefire thing there, and that's a lot to commit to. Like again, anyone other than those, I'm only moving Lori and Lysell for like a guy like Chychrun, who's that age, has a lot more room to even grow. Like again, Hamilton's a very good player, but I don't know if he's going to be exactly the guy that is worth sacrificing one of your two blue chip prospects in that regard.
I feel like the Ducks also are basing their price off what Sherratt got, because Lindholm's way better.
This is the problem, is that Sherratt thing is now going to make the entire market wacky. Because even like a guy like Middleton or a guy like Braun, who shouldn't cost a lot, like is Justin Braun going to go for like a second round pick now? Because like, all right, like I don't know if you want that. He would make plenty of sense as like a third pairing guy that, if you're replacing him with like Clifton, makes plenty of sense. It's just a short term thing that maybe puts you over the top this year. You don't have to worry about him next year. He's 35 years old. So, but if it's a second, all right. Same with Middleton. Like Middleton's an AHL guy who like has been very good this year, but are you giving up like a second and Oscar Steen for Jacob Middleton when you could have picked him off waivers last year? Not great, right? Like we'll see if the market maybe kind of slows down a little bit now. Teams kind of catch their breath after that Sherratt deal, which I mean, if you're Florida, you probably don't care because, you thought that that's a guy you identified and it makes you tougher to play against. So I don't think he's that good, but you went on and got him. You outbid everyone else for him. But now all these other teams are kind of evaluating what the next step has to be.
Well, it's like the Lightning a few years ago when they went out and got Coleman and Goodrow. And didn't they give up a first for Barclay Goodrow, like a career bottom six forward? I think that's not the standard, because again, it's like he came in, made an impact. They won 2 cups and everybody's like, oh, we got to be really careful. We don't have to be careful with our first round picks at all. We can just hand it out to any depth player because it could mean a lot, for that season. I think the Panthers are kind of in that position where they want to just go for it. They don't give it. They don't care.
And David Savard, who was legitimately a pure rental for them. Like, that was a first and a third round pick for him.
Yes.
Again, they got 2 cups out of it. So, but still.
Teach their own, I guess, on that sense. Yeah. The other thing is, by the way, the Bruins getting a depth defenseman. I mean, look at the game against the Wild the other night. If Clifton gets injured on any of those plays, what do you have on the right side after him?
Or
Clifton is already shaky, and add in him being gone, and suddenly you are putting guys who are supposed to be on the left side on the right side, and that becomes a little bit of an issue. So again, I totally understand the Bruins going for defenseman. Now we come down to what our predictions are, which we made predictions on Bruins beat. I'm going to guess they're different because you said they were going to get
Hertl and Middleton.
And then didn't you say they were also going to make a deal with the Ducks for Raquel?
I believe so, yes.
And I don't know if I don't think you put Lindholm in that too. You wouldn't have, I don't think you would have said
No.
both, but I said they were either going to do Hurl and Middleton or Raquel and Manson. That will not happen because Hurl's signed and Manson is in Colorado. Do you have any updated predictions? What do you think they do? Because my prediction is much different today.
I'm going to say they swing for the fences, Evan, and they acquired Jacob Chychrun and Clayton Keller for their entire farm system. No, I don't think they will do that.
Oh, I thought you were serious for a second. I was so excited.
I mean, no, I think that would be like the best case NHL be a GM mode thing that would solve their issues. I don't know what that cost would be. It would be ridiculous. The problem with Arizona is that Arizona makes so much sense in terms of a team that you can also dump contracts on because they just need to hit the cap floor. And Clayton Keller is a great 2C that could very well become a 1C down the road. He's a great young player. I don't think you have the assets to acquire Chychrun, and I don't think you have the assets to acquire him and Keller, who's also locked down long-term on a contract. So Arizona would be an appealing trade target, though, trade team, just because one, they desperately love to clear cap. They're, I think, intent on trying to sign Austin Matthews and want to free up as much money as possible. Granted, if you then move Chychrun and Keller, I don't know why that makes him an appealing destination for them, but that's a team that would work in terms of if you need to move, like John Moore's contract, or like even a guy like Mike Riley, who I think you might have to move if that's the situation. You have to free up other cap aside from Jake DeBrusk, then makes sense. I just don't think they have the assets for it. That's one maybe down the road. They move Keller, which would not surprise me, but I think right now I'll go with Bruins. I'm going to say they give up. They're going to leave this deadline without their first this year and next year, and it's in deals. Again, don't have the pieces, but I'll say they get Garland, who I think is going to be moved, and Lindholm.
That's legit. That's legit. That's a big deadline. That would be like, again,
I think they need it.
You need it, and they're building, and I think that's not a bad deadline. To me, I see them going smaller, and I know people don't love this. I think it's going to be adding a depth defenseman like a Justin Braun or a Middleton or someone like that. I'll say Braun. And maybe even another defenseman. Maybe they go 2 depth defensemen. I'm going to be a little different here. I'm going to say they go with Braun and Middleton because they're, again, teams get, when teams have bad things happen to them, they get very worried about those things happening again. And what happened in the Islanders series, I think they can't really get a number one unless they went for Chychrun. So I think they're going to go with 2 depth defensemen, just stack both sides, hope they put the right pieces out there. And up front, feels like Connor Garland has been tossed around a lot. The other guy who was said was Max Domi. Elliot Friedman mentioned Max Domi in that. So maybe they go for him too. But I will say, I think they go for 2 depth defensemen. That's my big prediction. They go for 2 depth defensemen. I don't see them doing big things this deadline. I initially did. Now it's getting closer and closer, and teams like Florida with more assets in New York and Minnesota and all these people get involved. Feels like it's going to be a smaller deadline, but again, I don't think they should do that. I'm with you. I think they should do what you said, not what I said.
Chychrun and Keller, the original one.
That is what they should do.
I just said that. So if that in the 0.1% chance it happens, I can then just run this video and be like, this is what I said originally.
Yeah, this is what I said. It's like the people on Twitter who are they're verified.
They toss out so many takes until one of them's right, and then you just flex on it. Yeah,
it's like exactly. The Raiders are interested in Stephon Gilmore. Yeah, it's like
Keller's definitely one you look down the road because I think now that Hurdle's off the boards, unless a guy like Studnicka pans out, or like Harrison down the road, like. You got to start identifying that next wave of, talented centers that probably aren't going to be sticking with the team in the next 2-3 years. Cause that's the only way I think you're, I mean, like, again, I don't know how exactly he fits into like a top 6 role. So you have to look at a guy like Keller or these other guys on teams that are either rebuilding or in spots where you just know they're not going to be there in a year or two and, start laying the groundwork there. Cause you need some help down the middle.
Yeah. They got to go big with that. They have to go big with that. Because again, if you open next season, Bergeron retires, let's say you got, Nosek, Holla, Coyle.
Not good. Not great.
Not great at all. But the deadline should be fun. And what can the people look forward to over at BSJ with deadline?
Yeah, we'll have all the breakdowns of any moves the Bruins make, any moves that happen across the market. We had a breakdown of the Hurdle news and how it impacted the Bruins. So all that stuff will be over at BSJ. So subscribe to bostonsportsjournal.com. You want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your day.